Hi, everybody. This is Holly Suso from Yarn Geek Boutique, and I have a really special treat for you today. I am talking to Yolanda from My Pretty Brown Doll and My Crochet Life. And I came across Yolanda just, kind of checking out the internet and seeing who's there, and found her business, which has these beautiful dolls that represent people of color, which is really, really important. And so I just wanted to introduce you to Yolanda. She's going to show us some of her dolls and tell us a little bit about what she does and also a little bit about My Crochet Life. So I'd like to introduce to you Yolanda.
Hey, thank you so much, Holly, for having me. I'm excited. This is my first podcast or interview for 2021, so I'm excited about that.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about first of all, My Pretty Brown Doll and who it and what you do and how you got started.
Okay, yeah. So My Pretty Brown Doll is my crochet doll design boutique, I guess you can say. I have been running My Pretty Brown Doll full time since 2017. I crochet dolls in all skin tones. I do want to put that out there because I get that question a lot when I say it's My Pretty Brown Doll. But I do specialize in dolls of color, especially dolls with natural hair inspired hairstyles. This came about, I've been crocheting for a very long time. Like I learned how to crochet when I was like 7 years old. Prior to me being My Pretty Brown Doll, I was running a business called Don't Get It Twisted Crochet. And I was doing that and I was still working full time, but I was mainly making hats and scarves at that time. I had a doll on my list just as, oh, this is just something I want to do. I just want to make a doll. And it was very interesting because when I went and I started looking for dolls to make, I just didn't see any dolls that looked like me. Like they were
Right.
all gorgeous dolls and they were all like, they all piqued my interest. And I was like, oh, I wonder, but it was just kind of like, why don't I see any that are brown or
Right.
done in a different skin tone other than like I saw peach and I saw white and I saw all these other colors other than brown. So I
Mhm.
was just like, well, I'm gonna make one. And because it's supposed to be a representation of me, I'm going to make it with brown yarn. And so I did, and I called that very first doll Patience, because when I tell you she tried my patience, I was just like, yeah, this might be why I don't
That's her
see it,
name.
because this is too much. This, like at that time, I considered myself a pretty good crocheter,
Mhm.
but I was just like, so people really do this? Like they just sit here and crochet and single crochet in the round over and over and over again. And at that time, the doll that I was using, the pattern that I was using as a guide had me sewing all the pieces of the doll together. So like I made a head, then I had to make arms, then a body, then the legs. And I was just like, this is really a lot. This is really a lot. But I put her on the internet and people were just like, oh my gosh, that's so cute. I love it. Can you make me one? And I was like, no, like, no, I
No,
cannot.
I cannot.
I cannot. But for some reason, I then had all these other ideas about dolls that I wanted to make. Particularly, what really, really, really stuck out at me for me was a doll with Afro puffs. Because I remember as a little girl, that was like that was your passage into toddlerhood when your hair was long enough to put
Right.
into puffs. And so
Right.
it's like, why don't I see any dolls with Afro puffs? Because this is like in the African American community, this is super important for us to be
Right.
able to put our hair into Afro puffs. And so that is when the doll that I call Mia was born. And it was also my very first doll pattern, because I was just like, okay, so now that I'm used to crocheting in the round, and now that I also do not want to put all these pieces together, I need my doll to be all one piece. So I figured out a way to kind of make her all one piece. And I can show you like a mini Mia. This is, so the original Mia is a little bit taller than this one, but this is a mini representation of what Mia would look like. And like,
Wow.
again, the most important thing was for me to find yarn that would be representative of Afro puffs. And
Yes.
this is what we came up with. This is a just a it's still an acrylic yarn. I've tried wool, but this is just like a thick acrylic fuzzy yarn
Mhm.
that I found, and it was like perfect. I love the texture of it. As you can see, this is what I always do every time.
She's
Just
squishy.
play, yeah, just squishing with the puffs. But I just fell in love with it, and so my pretty brown doll was kind of born from the original Mia, because after when I posted Mia with the Afro puffs, I could not tell people no, because they were
Yeah.
just like, I don't care what you say, you're making me one of these. Like, I don't care how much they cost. I don't care what you say. Like, my daughter has to have one.
Yeah.
And so I decided, you know what, if I'm going to make these dolls, because of the time that it required for me to make them, I was just like, you are going to have to pick. You are either going to have to be a doll maker, doll designer,
Yeah.
or, you know, you're going to make hats and scarves. So pick which one you want to do. And I decided I'm going to make dolls, and I'm going to figure out a way to just bring all these different ideas that I have in my head. We're going to figure out how to bring them to life and how to represent what I see and what other little brown girls see in the mirror. And so when I decided to change my name and everything like that to My Pretty Brown Doll, people were just like, well, why My Pretty Brown Doll? And I was like, because here we celebrate the pretty in every shade of brown.
That's right.
You and the spectrum of browns can go from, like, when I think about, you know, the different skin tones, you know, we have the lightest of lights to the darkest of the darks, and I need every little girl, and sometimes not so little girls, to know, regardless of where you fall on that spectrum, it's pretty. It's
That's
pretty.
right. That's
And
right.
so that is the goal, the mission, the vision for My Pretty Brown Doll. I oftentimes tell people I am more than a doll maker, because for me, this is more than a doll, because every single time I get somebody who opens a package and they look and they're like, that's me, like, that's me, then I
Right.
know that I did my little part in, you know, just breaking down some of these stereotypes, breaking down some of these ideas of what pretty is supposed to look like, what your hair is supposed to look like, how you're supposed to wear it. Like, is it okay to wear a head wrap? Is it okay? Because I can tell y'all a little secret. I'm natural, but listen, she loves a good wig. You know, like, you will sometimes see me with big curly hair, sometimes with straight short hair, sometimes with hair down my back. I wear braids, and people are looking at me like, is that the same? I'm like, yes, it just depends on how I felt when I woke up this morning.
That's
And
right.
so again, I try to represent all of that in my doll making.
That's really interesting because I saw on your website that you do have some dolls that have hair ties.
Mm-hmm,
And I love the one with the head wrap on them.
mm-hmm,
She's so cute. And I
mm-hmm.
want to make the Afro Puff one because, like you said, I resonate with that. I remember when I was little and I had the Afro Puffs, and I don't know if you remember, but those little click clack things that your
Yep,
mom put
your
up,
little
the
bobo.
little things that you
Yep.
your Afro
And they
Puff.
had to match your outfit,
That's
or
right.
like, it's
And
just like this all has to come together.
that's right, and so I had those, and then I had, braids, so, to have one that had the braids and the beads on them would be wonderful. All the transitions that I've gone through with my hair with
Exactly,
would
exactly.
be wonderful, would be
And
wonderful.
that's what I try to represent as best I can. Sometimes it gets a little harder when you're trying to do that with yarn, but finding different ways to manipulate the yarn, like, a lot of times, like, even with the Afro puffs, people are like, how do you make that? How did you
Yes.
do that? And when I tell people it's a pom pom, they're like, what? You know, the same thing with braids and beads. When you think about, like, doing cornrows and things like that, and I'll show you a different doll. Like, so this particular doll, So she has two
I
braids.
love her.
And so again, this same thing, it's like, well, how can I manipulate this yarn to
Right.
mimic a hairstyle that, you know, I've worn before? And it's the same thing. It's like taking this strand of yarn and cornroll it. And I tell people all the time, I said, maybe I should have been a hairstylist because
Mm,
I would be even better at this, because it's literally taking those same hairstyles that
right.
you get done at the hairstylist or in your friend's kitchen or your bed, you know, because we do hair everywhere.
Right, right.
So wherever you get your hair done, and taking those same hairstyles and like, can I recreate this with yarn? Is this possible for me to redo this with yarn? And what is that going to look like? And so even things like the single crochet, doing surface crochet, all of those different things to create the look that I want is incorporated into my doll designs. I've also done a Serena Williams doll,
Mhm.
and I was inspired by the fact that when after she had her daughter and she was able to fight back and come all the way to the finals of the US Open.
That's
And
right.
even though she didn't win, I don't know if you follow tennis or your followers follow tennis, but there was some controversy
Right.
around that
Right.
whole match.
Right. Mhm.
And she had made some statements about, listen, I know it's very easy for people to categorize, you know, put me in this box of being like the angry Black woman,
Mhm.
but we're not going to make me out to be that. I'm allowed to be emotional. I'm allowed to express my opinion. And I'm allowed to do that even if I am on this court. Like, you
Right.
don't get to minimize me and make me feel less than because
Right.
I express myself in a way that you don't feel
You're
like
not
is
comfortable with.
appropriate. Exactly. And I was so inspired just by her words that I was like, listen, I got to make a doll for her. And so what I made her, but with braids and beads, but in the same outfit that she had from the US Open. And so
Mm.
I did, and my caption or my inspiration for that is, what would younger Serena say to older Serena?
Mm.
And younger Serena would say, but we keep going, even when they try to tell us that we can't. We keep right on going. And so that the next girl who comes on this court with a head full of braids and beads, she
Mhm.
will know, listen, I can do this and I can do this my way. So my most recent inspiration was my doll Truth and Justice. They are very similar, but they're different, but they're both Black Panther, the movement, not the movie,
Right.
doll designs. But I was just inspired by all the things that are happening right now. And
Mhm.
I'm just like, what would have happened if this movement had still been able to survive the times and still
Mhm.
been active? And what would that social justice look like for us now if that movement was still happening now?
I'm imagining um a crochet doll for a family member that this is going to be an heirloom. This is going to be something that she's going to pass down
Exactly.
forever, right?
Exactly. Because, and
Because it
that's
represents
super important,
her.
because I tell people, like, exactly. And I tell people out there, I was like, my dolls are not meant as toys. I
Right,
was like, now I know people who do make them as toys. And so there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But that is not what I do. My dolls are meant for keepsakes. And so
right,
I make it clear to them, listen, she's a tea party doll, not a
right,
playground doll. Do not
right,
take her thinking she's about to be on the slide and in the
right,
sandbox, because she's
right,
going to look at you like, man, if you don't take me and put me back on the shelf where
right.
I belong. And so I do, you know, make it clear to people that, listen, this is the doll that she can have tea with in her room, and then she needs to kind of go back up on the shelf. They're very sturdy, they're gonna last,
Mhm.
but it's just not meant as a toy. And
You
so
still
I
have
do
to
make
take
that
care of
clear,
it.
because as you said, it's something that I want you to be able, for if you gave it to your daughter, you know, hopefully one day if she has kids, I want her to pass it down to her daughter, or maybe to someone else. Like, it's something that's meant to go from family member to family member to family member. And that's, you know, I've had some people order, like one aunt was giving her niece a
Mhm.
doll every year for Christmas. And it was a different representation of how the niece had grown
Right.
throughout the year. So the very first year, it was kind of like a baby doll, and she had this really cute, just full afro. The next year, we did a doll that I absolutely love, but I call her Princess Gracie, but she had a purple afro because Gracie's favorite color was now purple, and everything had to be purple. And so we did all these shades of purple for her outfit, and then, but she had this purple afro and a crown, and it was just absolutely gorgeous. And then next year she was like, but now she's in the unicorns and she wants this and this.
Right. Right.
Okay, so and so, but now Gracie can go back and look. Oh yeah, I remember when, you know, I was, well, she might not remember, but she can see. I do remember this, or, you know, there was a time when this is what I look like, and then there was a time when this is what I look like, and yeah,
Right.
there was a time when I was obsessed with unicorns.
Right.
So
Right. Um, when what was I going to ask you? When can you talk a little bit about, because I don't know. Can you
mhm.
talk a little bit about the difference, if there is any, between doll making and amigurumi?
So for me, I do consider them different, although there are times when I will use them interchangeably just because it just works better for marketing.
Mhm.
If I'm selling the pattern or something like that, I sometimes use the word amigurumi or amigurumi, just because that's the word that people know and recognize. And then, but I do consider myself a doll maker and not necessarily amigurumi. For me, amigurumi tends to be really small, character, like toyish, very toyish like. Now the method or the technique, you use a lot of the amigurumi techniques in doll making, or you can use those techniques in doll making. I think the biggest difference for me for the doll making is um, bringing the doll to life with these clothes and with these different features that kind of represent the person that the doll is for. And I kind of feel like with amigurumi, it's very character. It's whatever the character is. Um, and so, yeah, wait, I think we lost Holly. Maybe she'll come back. So yeah, so, but that's the biggest, I see them as different just based on what they're used for and what they're meant to represent. And I think doll making for me is more of like, it's an actual doll. It's an actual um person per se that you're trying to represent or bring to life, whereas the amigurumi is more of characters and toys, and more, you can use more of your imagination with amigurumi.